And so if you want to take an equation and evaluate it when a variable is substituted with a specific number, okay, it winds up being a relatively easy method to use your calculator. What I want you to do is see if you can solve on your own. Okay, we'll go through both the manual solution for it as well as how to do it on your calculator. Okay. But if I gave you this equation and asked you to find y when x is equal to negative 4, okay, I want you to see if you can solve that very quickly, please. A couple ways you can solve it. If you're going to solve this manually, which means if you're just going to do it by hand without a calculator, all you would need to do is substitute in the variable. And so whatever value you have for your variable, you're going to plug that in. So we have a negative y plus 2 times if we substitute in our negative 4 for the x. And then you'll just solve your equation. And so if we're going to then solve this, we can multiply through. We have 2 times a negative 4 gives you a negative 8. Add 8 to both sides. And you get negative y is equal to negative 2. The final step would be divide or multiply both sides by negative, cancel those, and you get your solution, y is equal to 2. Okay. So there's how to solve it manually. You can also solve it with your calculator. Okay. And here's the way to do this with your calculator. Okay. You can use both, you can combine the solve function with the with key. Okay, so one, you could, if you wanted to, you could enter this equation right here. So you could manually substitute. You could do this first step manually, and then just use the solve function of your calculator. So one of the ways that we could have done this is just solve negative y plus 2 times a negative 4 equals negative 10. Solve for y in this case, so comma y, and then hit enter. Okay, notice, and this came up on the quiz, okay, when I substitute in especially a negative number, I would highly encourage you to put any negative number inside parentheses because there are some properties involving exponents and negative numbers that played tricks on some of you guys on the quiz. Okay? So if you put it inside parentheses, hit enter, and you get your confirmation that y is equal to 2. Okay, so now that blends a little bit of using the calculator and using kind of a manual solution. Okay, if you want to use your calculator only, okay, and you want to know how or what the keystroke pattern is to enter this, what you could do is the following. You could use the solve, okay, and then you just type in your original equation, so negative y plus 2x equals negative 10. And before you identify what you want it to solve with, you can tell the calculator you also at the same time want to evaluate, using the with key, x equal to whatever our x was, negative 4. Now you can solve for y and close that off. And when you hit enter, you get your same solution. Okay, so did everybody see the steps that I used for that? So you could enter this on your calculator as solve. Plug in the equation, negative y plus 2x equals negative 10. You're also in the same step evaluating, which again we've done separately already, but now you can combine that using this with key, x equals negative 4. And then you can separate that off and say you want to take this whole expression that you're evaluating when x is negative 4, and you want to solve it for y, and close it. So here would be the keystroke entry for your calculator. All right, I want you to try the following. I want you to find y when x is equal to 5, given the following equation. Okay, so solve for y. when x is equal to 5, given this equation. Negative xy plus 2x equals 20. All right, if we're going to solve this by hand, manually plug in your 5 for x, and then solve your equation. So we have a negative 5y plus 10 is equal to 20. Subtract a 10 from both sides. That gives you negative 5y is equal to 10. If we divide both sides by a negative 5, we get y is equal to negative 2. So here would be the manual way to solve this. And now, if you're going to enter this in your calculator, so if you go to the solve key, so F2, the algebra tab, and then hit solve, type in your equation. With your x equal to 5, and you want to solve for y. Did anybody enter it this exact way and get an error or a mistake? Okay, and this is what I wanted to bring up with this problem. Okay. One of the things that is a limitation on this calculator, right, limited in that it's not what maybe you guys would think, is your calculator cannot infer multiplication of variables. Okay, what that means is when your calculator sees xy written the way I wrote it right here, it thinks of that as a single variable that's just named xy. It doesn't think of it as x, then times y. Okay, it does not register implied multiplication between variables. Okay, now it does for a number, like a coefficient followed by a variable. So a number, like if you put 5x in your calculator, it knows it means 5 times x. But if you put variables side by side, or if you put a variable and then a number, it does not register that as multiplication. So if I were to try to hit enter right here, it does not give me the right answer. It's confusing. What it's saying is it doesn't even know, it doesn't register that you have, or it'll solve for this x right here, putting the xy as a separate variable. It doesn't know that this x refers to both of these. So what you would need to do in a case like that, and it's going to come up in the next type of thing that we do in this section as well, is you need to explicitly show multiplication of variables. And so if you just put the little multiply symbol in between those and then hit enter, entering it the exact same way, it will now confirm your answer. Y is equal to negative 2. Now, the same thing, like I said, it works like this. If I ask you to use your calculator and solve the equation 5x equals 10. First of all, what is the answer going to be? Okay, so if we went solve and put 5x equals 10, solve for x, solve, it confirms x is equal to 2. And now, to distinguish this, what if you put x times 5? So if I wrote 5 times x is equal to 10. Okay. As soon as you put the variable in front, now your calculator thinks of that variable as x5. It thinks you're labeling something x5. So if you try to solve for this, it's telling you x5 is equal to 10. You just wrote that. So all it's doing is it's labeling your variable x5 instead of just x. Okay, so you have to put